Hello everyone, welcome to the Missouri Teacher Development System Artisan Teacher on Demand video series. I'm Mike Rutherford, happy to be your host and facilitator for this project. As you know, the Artisan Teacher Initiative is a study of 23 themes of excellent, skillful, talented, gifted, even teaching. And what we're doing in this on-demand learning series is taking a few of these artisan themes that are most linked to and aligned to your competencies in the Missouri Teacher Development System and spending a little bit of time working on the concept and working on how to apply that concept into our classroom. Thanks for being a part of the series. An exciting and interesting topic for the day. We're going to be working on Artisan Teacher theme number 15, which is titled Neural Downshifting. Now, of all the 23 themes in the Artisan Teacher Field Guide, this is actually the only one that's named as a counter theme. So in other words, what we're going to talk about are some classroom applications of ways to prevent neural downshifting, not how to cause it. Now, neural downshifting is a term coined by Leslie Hart in his 1983 book, Human Brain, Human Learning. It kind of is a catchy term and it kind of stuck around. So, you know, whenever we set out to name these themes, we tried to name them pretty much what they're already called in practice around our country anyway. And so Hart's name of neural downshifting has really kind of has a little stick-to-itiveness, and so we're going to continue to use that term. I have the definition here. Neural downshifting: the ability of the teacher to prevent survival mode thinking by eliminating physical threats, psychological threats, and situations where students feel helpless or out of control. So the idea of neural downshifting is that the human brain sometimes shifts down from its normal mode of rational, insightful, keen thinking to more of a fight or flight approach, or more of a survival mode thinking. The theory goes something like this. We all have, obviously, a brain that helps us not only survive, but thrive in our environment. One of the survival aspects of our brain, and really quite a phenomenal one and quite a valuable one, is that when we're in a survival situation, it's like our brain knowing that we don't immediately need to consider Shakespeare, or we don't need to solve a binomial equation. You know, if we're out in a dark parking lot at night going to our car and someone comes up and attempts to rob us, it's not our brain's ability to do higher level thinking and analysis at that moment that's going to help us survive. It's our brain's ability at that moment to really simplify things and to make a quick determination. Should I run? Should I fight? Should I freeze? Right? And so this survival mode thinking, we think, is a important part of thinking. You know, when we think about the brain, we think about this convoluted, fissured gray matter. You know, anatomically, we know that the cerebral cortex of the brain is about 1/4 of an inch or so thick. It surrounds our brain, and the reason for all these fissures is, as we've evolved over the years, our brain has gotten larger and larger and larger, and so to fit all that cerebral power into our skull, it has to fold up a bit, right? So neural downshifting is the absolutely normal human response to a suddenly realized stressful or threatening situation. And it's good for us. It's good that we have that. Now, the problem with neural downshifting is it doesn't work very well in classrooms. And so if students are sitting around downshifted into their survival mode thinking, and we are, as teachers, asking them to do more high-level cognitive activities, there's a mismatch there. So it turns out to be pretty valuable for us as teachers to learn about neural downshifting, learn what causes it, and then when we're asking our students to be at their very best and to use their cerebral cortex at its very in its very most capable ways, we want to make sure we're not accidentally triggering that downshifted response. Neural downshifting is something that happens to us regularly, perhaps several times every day. I'm trying to think of some examples, and I'm going to ask you to generate a few examples also, out of classroom examples of just how neural downshifting works. So the first thing I thought of is, if you ever get into an argument with someone, has this ever happened to you? Things get a little heated. The person's talking fast and loud, and maybe you're responding by talking fast and loud as well. But somehow when you're in the middle of a good argument with someone, it's hard to think of just that absolutely most wicked thing you could have thought of to say. That would have just cut their argument off at the knees, right? But now when do you think of that? You think of it later, don't you? So if you're like me, sometimes when I get into an argument with someone, I don't know about you, I don't want to just participate in an argument, I want to win. And I can't really think of anything extra creative to say. But about 5 minutes later, then my brain upshifts back into the cerebral cortex, and then I think of what I could have said, what I should have said. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever been on a phone call? Here's another example for me of neural downshifting. And you're calling a help desk, and they say, okay, you will have someone come and talk to you in 4.5 minutes. And so they play some music, and it's counting down, 2 minutes, 1 minute. And when the person finally comes on the phone, I don't know what it is, but it seems like I've been waiting on them so long, I can't remember what my question was, or I don't get it out very clearly. I've always wondered how that happens. I think that's, again, another example of neural downshifting. Sometimes, when we're out and about driving in the car, have you noticed that if you're having a conversation with someone in the seat next to you, you can have a pretty deep conversation while you're driving in the car. But if traffic ever starts to get thick, or if something unexpected happens and a car swerves out of its lane, or if a light changes suddenly, have you ever noticed how you can't continue that conversation? You have to, pay attention to your driving. That's your brain saying, pay attention to the survival aspects of this before you allow yourself to pay attention to the higher level aspects of this too. Hey, your turn. Let's just work on for a moment. We're going to have a processing time, a thinking time. The screen will go away for 10 or 15 seconds. You'll push pause. And what I'd like to ask you to do is, just like I just did, generate some examples from your life, not as a teacher, just as a person outside the classroom, of neural downshifting, where some stressor, some threatening aspect of a situation caused you to temporarily lose access to your best and highest level thinking. Come up with a few examples of that, think about them, jot them down, then hit play, and we'll continue from there. Thanks. Welcome back. So now let's take that concept, neural downshifting. When our brain leaves its higher level thought mode and goes into its binary thinking, right? Good guys, bad guys, do this or do that, fight or flight. We have examples. We know that that happens. And we know that it happens for us, and we also know that it happens for students. So obviously, what we'd like to do is create a classroom environment where our students never feel compelled, or at least not very often, to go into survival mode thinking. Because we know when they do that, they don't have access to their analysis and their creativity and their synthesis and their imagination, all the things we want them to do, with their higher level thinking. There's a diagram in the chapter, and I've copied a page out of it and put it over here on the flip chart. Let's take a look at understanding how classroom neural downshifting works. So here we have the idea of upshift is on top, downshift is on the bottom. We know that it's threat and stress that cause the shift from up to down. There are three categories of downshifting threats in a classroom: threats in the physical environment, threats in the social-emotional environment, and just anytime a student feels out of control of their current situation. Those can all be downshifting events. The fruits of upshifted thinking are creativity, insight, analysis. We're more generative. We're able to get more and more options out on the table to solve problems. And the fruits of downshifted thinking are rote repetition, simple thinking, fewer options. So it's not like we can't learn at all when we're downshifted. We certainly can, but we can't do a lot of these higher level things that we'd like to do in the classroom. So let's focus then on, if this is what we want, and this is what we don't want, and these are the three things that cause this to happen, then let's take a moment and imagine some ways we can improve the physical, social, emotional, and loss of control situations that occur in our classrooms. So let's just take those one at a time, and we'll just generate some classroom examples of those. Number one, the physical environment. The human brain and students' brain tend to downshift whenever they detect some sort of a physical threat, right? So if you're a middle school student and a bunch of other guys or girls come up to you early in the morning and say, you know, after lunch today, you know, me and our friends, you know, we're gonna have it out for you, and you're thinking about that all day, that's a physically threatening situation. So we obviously know that the threat of physical violence causes us to downshift. Now, certainly your classroom is going to be a sanctuary from that, let's hope, but other physical threats can downshift as well. Being overcrowded, being too hot, being too cold, forgetting to eat breakfast and it's 11:15 in the morning and you're really pretty hungry, having a fever or feeling under the weather. Those are all physically threatening situations that can cause students to be at their less than optimal condition for learning. So we want to first of all address in our classrooms as many physical stressors as we can and try to alleviate that. Number two, psychological or social emotional threats. So you've heard the saying, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, true, but words will downshift you. So often the violence in a classroom isn't in the physical domain, it's more in the social emotional domain. So being embarrassed in front of your peers, getting an answer wrong in front of the group, feeling like you're not dressed like you should be, like the other kids in the class are today, not having as much vocabulary to draw upon. You know, students are pretty fragile in some ways, socially and emotionally, and when they feel a stress in this domain, well, the problem is that the human brain has not come up with a separate downshift for physical and for social. So a physical threat is more serious, we understand that downshift, but basically the brain seems to downshift exactly the same way it would for a physical threat if really all I'm doing is losing face or being a bit embarrassed you know, with my peers around me, or just getting an answer wrong in public. Physical safety, psychological, socially emotional safety, and then the third downshifter that I think as teachers we can address is simply called loss of control. When the human brain senses that it's not the one making the decisions about what's happening to me in the next couple of minutes, sometimes it downshifts just as a precaution. Just because, hey, since I'm not the one calling the shots here, I better downshift just in case whoever's in charge puts me into a stressful or a threatening situation. I've got a few friends who really don't like to ride in the car. They like to drive. When they're riding, I think it makes them feel like they're out of control and they're just sort of nervous. I have even seen them put their foot on the imaginary brake on their side of the car. I know some people that don't like to ride roller coasters. You know, a roller coaster kind of puts you out of control. Once you get on it and once it starts, it's not like in the middle of the ride you can change your mind. A lot of people see that as fun and exhilarating, but a few people see that as pretty stressful. we are stressed sometimes when we don't have control around our immediate situation. So as a teacher, remember, sometimes our actions can cause students' brains to interpret their situation as not being in charge, as not being in control. Sometimes something simple like saying, instead of saying, I want you to go to page 415 in the back of your book, and I'd like for you to do problems number 17, 18, and 19 for practice, okay? And you've got 6 minutes to get that finished. Go. Rather than be so prescriptive and so in control of every detail of that assignment, which then, of course, means what? We're subtracting control from students. You know, maybe it would make sense to alter that assignment to sound more like this. On page 415, you'll notice there are 15 practice problems. The first 5 are easy, the next 5 are medium, and the last 5 are really hard. I want you to do 3. Do 1 from the first 5, 1 from the second 5, and then do 1 from the final set of 5, and that's going to be the hardest one. You pick the problems you want to do. Generally, the closer to 1, the easier they are, and the closer to 15, the more difficult they are. So we'll let that be your decision. 3 problems for practice. Let's take 15 minutes to get it done, but you can choose which ones to work on. Do you see how that second approach sort of just puts students in the driver's seat? Now, as a teacher, we're still getting what we want. We're still getting 3 math problems. We're still getting 15 minutes of good paced practice. It's just that we've taken students and putting them a little more in the driver's seat so that they don't sense that out of control downshifting. You know, customer service representatives are taught this principle. If you buy a toaster at the store and you don't like it or it breaks and you take it back, the person who works in customer service is trained to give you choices, right? So when you bring your toaster back and say, this toaster doesn't work, instead of saying, well, here's your only option, often they'll give you choices, right? They'll say, you can either have your money back, or we can fix this toaster, or we can give you store credit plus a coupon to go back and get another toaster that fits your needs better. Mr. Rutherford, which one would you like? Now that's actually kind of brilliant, because when I'm downshifted and someone gives me choices to make, choosing from among options is a higher level thought process. So what do I have to do? I have to upshift my thinking to make the choices. And if I upshift my thinking, I'm probably also a little more cooperative customer as well. It works in customer service. It works in classrooms too. All right, your turn. In our second processing time, our custom is, let's be specific and make some applications of the concept. So we've worked on the concept of neural downshifting. We know what causes it. We know of the 3 triggers. Now let's do this. What are some ways you could improve the environment of your classroom to make it less stressful in the physical domain and or the psychological domain and or the who's in charge here domain in your classroom? Take one of those and imagine some improvements that you could make. And what we know will happen is, if we were to do that, we're going to have more high-level thinking, less downshifted thinking in our classrooms. Okay, your turn. Generate examples of how you might reduce neural downshifting in your classroom, specific applications. Welcome back. Thanks for your good thinking and your good example building. So in a high-performing classroom, as teachers, we are the designers of our classroom environment. And here are 3 design principles for us to always keep in mind. Let's design for physical safety. Let's design for psychological safety. And let's design for ways that put students, as much as possible, in control of their own immediate situation, and the way we do that is by introducing choices. Those are some ways of preventing downshifting and causing upshifting. One other application of neural downshifting that I'd just like to share as we kind of close our thinking on this is, If neural downshifting is a concept that helps us to have a higher level thinking classroom, then let's remember that neural downshifting operates in the lives of adults at your school too. And so if there's ever a group of people that need to be thinking at their highest level, it's the faculty of a school. So one of the things that school administrators and teacher leaders, and really all of us as members of our school's faculty, the community of professionals that work at your school, we should address those issues for ourselves. We want to come to work. For us to be the best teachers, we should come to work every day in a physically safe environment and in a psychologically safe environment. And to the degree possible, we should be able to make choices about things that impact our immediate situation and our immediate well-being. And when that is true, most of the time, what do you get? You get more high-level thinking, analysis, creativity, innovation, reinvention, right? Breakthrough performances. None of that happens when we're stressed out because of physical or social or loss of control issues, whether it's students or whether it's adults as well. Thanks a lot for being a part of Missouri Teacher Development System, Artisan Teacher On-Demand Learning Series. We hope you'll join us for future episodes. Thanks for your great work today. See you later.